Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Pure Biology, and today I come with another video that is the signaling pathway of the hormone. Okay, signaling pathway of hormone. This is the general pathway that is applicable for maximum all the hormone signaling pathway, or in this pathway is actually explain the process of signaling pathway of every hormones. Okay, so here what is saying that this first we have to know that what is the signaling pathway. So hormone exert their influence on target cells by binding to receptor proteins. First, generally hormone sometimes it can regulate the target cells activity directly inducing the target cell, or sometimes it regulates the target cells activity by binding with the receptors. These receptors that present where this is present in the membrane, cells membrane, plasma membrane. Hormones bind these transmembrane receptors that is located at the plasma membrane or the ER. ER means endoplasmic reticulum. So either they can bind with the receptor, then they control or regulate the activity of the target cells, or sometimes they directly induce the target cell to becomes activated. Okay. Now these receptors generally, here I am trying to explain about the receptors activity. That means the how the hormones activates any target cells by with the help of the receptors. These receptors bind the hormone ligand at one site and transfuse information to another site, and often involve the activation of a receptor kinase activity. So what is saying that these receptors generally acts when the hormone binds with these receptors. So how they can act or how they can play their role, this is explained in here. That means the receptor has the two sides, one for binding with the ligand or another side that binding for the hormone. Sometimes ligand is necessary or sometimes ligand is not necessary, that is dependent on the receptors. But when the generally receptor has the two sides, one for the ligand binding side, another for the hormone binding side, and so that's why the receptor bind the hormone ligand, and this ligand is responsible for sometimes, in some cases the ligand is not attached with the receptors, the hormone cannot bind with the receptor. So ligands sometimes play important role. The transfuse information to another site and often involve the activation of a receptor kinase activity. So when the ligand has already bound with the receptors, the hormone generally try to bind with the ligand. And another site, what is there? Another site is the activation site of what? Activation site of the receptor kinase activity. That means receptor has the kinase or the enzymes, you can say, that is the activity site present on the receptor, because if the kinase not becomes activated, then the signaling pathway is not happening. Okay, so that site is the activation site of the receptor kinase activity. Okay, the transmembrane receptors can be thought of as information relays, and the presence of hormone initiates a cause of action through the allosteric changes in the protein. Okay, the important thing is that when the receptor binds with the hormone, there is a change is found, okay, on the receptor side. So if the hormone already has bound with the receptor, their conformation or their structure may be changed, and this is why this is happening. If the structure of the receptor not be changed, then the hormone that already present, that cannot understand if the receptor is free or not. That means already there is hormone present or not. If the hormone is present and the structure of the receptors is changed, so another hormone, obviously related this hormone, particular type of hormone, so that cannot bind with the receptor. Okay. Other hormones interact with the intracellular receptors, in which the hormone forms part of the protein-protein interaction domain. When the hormones directly interact with the intracellular receptor, okay, these are present, these receptors present in the extracellular membrane, okay, and in case of intracellular membrane, when hormones interact with the intracellular receptors, then the hormone forms part of the protein-protein interaction domain. So there a protein-protein structure is formed, and binding of hormone to the receptor or the co-receptor, that changes the binding affinity of the receptors for other proteins, with the hormone itself participating in the binding domain interaction. So the same thing happening in the next cases. There is ligand sometimes present, but in case of intracellular receptor, there are domain present. So when receptor and hormone, they can bind with each other, then the structure of the domain may be changed. Okay, and that's why the changing domain cannot bind more hormones with them. Okay. The downstream effects of the hormonal signaling includes the alteration of the gene expression patterns and in some cases non-genomic responses. So here genes are involved, because if the receptor and hormone, they can bind with each other, they can control the activity of some genes. And in that cases, the transcription process involved. But not all cases that genes are present. In some cases, the activity may be non-genomic. In that situation, the transcription is not necessary. But if it is genomic, there are some proteins involvement, and the transcription factors and the transcription process all are same. So this is saying that in most cases, many of the transcription factors, I have already told you that factors whose activities respond to hormone signaling. And obviously this is necessary for the genomic expression. Hormone binds to the receptor and the TF activation, this is the transcription factors, and involve the signaling via the protein kinases. So I have already told that some proteins are also involved here. So these are the protein kinases may be present, or the phosphatase is present, or sometimes the regulated proteins present. And here the proteolysis process, when the regulated protein present, there is a proteolysis process may be occur. And obviously another important protein, ubiquitin is present, then ubiquitination is occurring. Okay, and addition of the phosphate group is obviously necessary for the phosphorylation, because without phosphorylation the proteins cannot be activated. Okay, or proteins, if the proteins cannot be activated, if the protein is not activated, then the target protein, then what happening, this transcription factors never be activated, and if the transcription factors never be activated, and that's why the signaling pathway of the hormone is not happening. Okay, so this is the signaling process in brief, how the hormones and signaling process and receptors all are important for the signaling pathway process. Clear? So this is briefly explained, and you just check out all the signaling pathway that are already explained in my channel. And obviously it's a request to the newcomers, if this channel is helpful to you, then please subscribe and share this channel. Okay, and you can comment in the comment box, obviously, if this is helpful or not, this topic is helpful or not. And another important thing is that if the subscribers, the number of subscribers becomes more, then I will try to discuss the different topics with the questions, obviously, that are generally in GATE or CSIR NET they have. So I will try to discuss this topic related questions in my channel. So